In the mansion of a billionaire, a 9-year-old girl, the daughter of the maid, lives as if she were invisible. Humiliated, rejected, and treated as if she had no worth, she suffers in silence every day. But everything changes when the powerful master of the house decides to perform a cruel test. He pretends to be asleep to see if the girl is truly honest, or if, as he believes, everyone has a price. What he never imagines is that this innocent child carries such a pure heart that her words will shake the very walls of the mansion and reveal a secret capable of changing everyone's fate forever. Get ready for a story of injustice, courage, and divine justice, where good triumphs over evil in a way no one expected. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. The morning sun poured through the grand stained glass windows of the mansion, casting golden light across the vast, luxurious halls. Persian rugs, marble staircases, and furniture that looked like they belonged in a museum filled the place. It was a modern palace overflowing with wealth, yet cold, lifeless. Walking through that grandeur was Marina, a humble woman in a crisp maid's uniform, carrying a silver tray in her hands. Just behind her, almost hiding in her mother's shadow, walked Anna, her 9-year-old daughter. The little girl was black, with wide, curious eyes that sparkled at the sight of the mansion's splendor, yet also carried the quiet weight of rejection she always felt there. As Marina served breakfast, the child remained silent, motionless, trying her best not to draw attention. The lady of the house, Vivian, the billionaire's wife, shot Anna a look of disdain. "Marina, didn't I tell you not to bring your daughter here?" she said sharply, not caring that the girl could hear. "This isn't a place for children, especially a child like her." Anna's heart sank. She lowered her gaze and stood still, as if wishing she could disappear. It was as though her very existence was an inconvenience in that house. At the table sat Mr. Richard Turner, a billionaire known across the city for his business empire and immense fortune. He held a newspaper, barely reacting to his wife's words. He glanced at the little girl for a moment, then returned to reading. His silence cut deeper than any insult. Anna couldn't understand why she was always treated this way. She had done nothing wrong. She only wanted to be close to her mother, who worked endless hours. But here she was nothing more than the maid's daughter. Nothing more. As Marina cleared the dishes, Anna's eyes drifted toward the table. She saw a piece of bread, untouched, the butter melting into it. Her stomach tightened. It had been hours since she'd eaten properly. But before she could even think about reaching for it, Vivian's cold voice pierced the air again. "Don't you dare touch that. This is not for you," she snapped. "Such an ill-mannered child." Anna immediately stepped back, shrinking into herself as though trying to vanish. From behind his newspaper, Richard watched closely. Not with pity, but with a calculating curiosity. Is this girl really as innocent as she seemed? He wondered, a man used to testing the loyalty and honesty of everyone around him. Little did Anna know, he was already planning a cruel test, one that would soon change both her life and her mother's forever. That same afternoon, the mansion was unusually quiet. The clinking of silverware had faded, and most of the staff had retreated to their duties in the back. Anna sat alone in a corner of the living room, her small hands folded in her lap, swinging her feet nervously. Her mother was upstairs changing linens, while Vivian had gone out for her afternoon shopping. For the first time in hours, the mansion felt less suffocating. But Richard Turner had stayed behind. He walked slowly into the room, his footsteps echoing against the polished marble floor. He studied the girl from a distance, his sharp eyes narrowing, filled with a mixture of curiosity and calculation. Everyone has a price, he thought. Even children. The question is, what will hers be? Richard, a man who had built empires by mistrusting everyone, never believed in innocence. He lived by testing people, partners, employees, even his own family. And now, he wanted to test the little girl who sat timidly in his house. He cleared his throat, making Anna jump. "What's your name again?" he asked, his tone indifferent. Anna looked up shyly. "Anna, sir." Hmm, Anna. He repeated her name slowly, as though tasting it. Your mother works for me. That makes you a guest here, in a way. But tell me. He leaned closer, his piercing gaze unsettling the child. Are you a good girl? Or do you get tempted when no one's looking? Anna frowned, not fully understanding. I try to be good, sir. Richard smirked faintly, almost as if amused by her innocence. Without another word, he stood up, walked to the grand sofa and laid down, pretending to be exhausted. He placed his watch, a gold piece worth more than Marina would earn in years, right on the coffee table, in plain sight. Beside it, he left his wallet, half open, showing crisp bills inside. I need a nap, he murmured loudly enough for Anna to hear. Stay here, don't disturb me. With that, he closed his eyes, his breathing steadying into a convincing rhythm of sleep. But Richard wasn't sleeping. Beneath his half-shut eyelids, he watched. Every flicker of the girl's expression, every hesitant glance toward the temptations he had laid before her. Anna sat frozen, confused. Her wide eyes lingered on the wallet, then quickly darted away. She had never seen so much money up close. Her little hands clenched, her stomach tightened again. She thought about the bread she hadn't eaten earlier, about her mother's struggles to buy even the simplest things for her. The silence grew heavy. The gold watch glistened under the light. Richard's sleeping figure remained perfectly still. This was his cruel game, to see if a hungry, ignored little girl would fall into temptation. But Anna's heart was pure, and in the next few moments she would reveal something that would leave the billionaire completely speechless. The room felt larger than ever, its silence almost unbearable. The ticking of the antique grandfather clock echoed like a drumbeat, marking each passing second. Anna sat on the edge of the armchair, her feet barely touching the floor, staring at the golden watch and the wallet gleaming on the table, her stomach twisted with hunger. The buttery bread from breakfast still haunted her thoughts, and now, the sight of all that money whispered temptations she had never faced before. But more than hunger, what weighed on her heart was fear of doing something wrong. Her mother always told her, Anna, we may be poor, but we are honest. God sees everything, and he never abandons the just. The little girl's wide eyes shifted to Richard, who lay asleep on the sofa. His breathing was deep, steady, convincing. But Anna didn't dare move closer. Instead, she slipped down from her chair and approached the table, not to touch the wallet, but to pick up the blanket that had slipped from the back of the sofa. With her tiny hands, she gently placed the blanket over Richard, covering his chest. She hesitated for a moment, then whispered softly, almost like a prayer, God bless you, sir. And please don't be so harsh with Mama. She works so hard. Her voice cracked, but she quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Then instead of taking anything from the table, Anna knelt beside the sofa, folding her hands together. She prayed, Lord, please take care of my Mama. She's tired and sad, but she always smiles for me. Help me be strong. And please don't let the rich people treat her so bad. They don't know how much she suffers. The innocence in her words filled the grand living room with a weight Richard had not expected. Behind his half-closed eyes, the billionaire felt something stir deep within his chest. He had planned to catch her stealing, to confirm his cynical belief that everyone had a price. But instead, what he heard was a child's prayer, selfless, full of love, asking nothing for herself, only for her mother. For the first time in years, Richard Turner froze. His eyes opened slightly, and he caught sight of Anna kneeling there, small and fragile, her head bowed in prayer. The man who thought he had seen everything in life was left speechless, and in that silence something cracked inside his hardened heart. Richard Turner, the man feared in boardrooms and admired in magazines, lay motionless on the sofa. Outwardly, he seemed asleep. Inwardly, he was shaken to his core. He had staged this moment expecting one outcome, to expose the little girl's true nature. He wanted to prove to himself, and perhaps to his wife, that even the daughter of a maid could not resist greed. He believed people were all the same, hungry for money, eager to take what wasn't theirs. But what he witnessed was something entirely different. Anna didn't touch the wallet. She didn't even glance longingly at the sparkling gold watch. Instead, she had covered him tenderly with a blanket and whispered a prayer for her mother, a prayer that, unbeknownst to her, pierced through Richard's armor of arrogance. As he lay there, fighting the urge to reveal himself, his chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in decades. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was guilt. For the first time in years, guilt burned through his veins like fire. He opened his eyes slightly, just enough to see her still kneeling. Her tiny hands were clasped, her lips moving gently as she prayed. She wasn't asking for toys or food or clothes. She was asking God to help her mother endure humiliation. Richard swallowed hard. His throat was dry. A flash of memory crossed his mind. His own childhood years ago, before money built a wall around him. He remembered his mother, a poor woman who scrubbed floors so he could eat. She, too, used to whisper prayers over his bed at night. And suddenly the test he thought was so clever felt cruel, unbearably cruel. At that moment, the sound of heels clicking on marble echoed through the hallway. Vivian had returned from shopping. Her voice carried through the room, sharp and cold. "Richard, are you napping again?" Anna jumped, startled, and quickly stood up. She didn't want Vivian to find her kneeling there. It would only cause more trouble for her mother. Richard opened his eyes fully now, sitting up. His expression was unreadable, a storm of emotions swirling beneath the surface. Vivian stepped into the living room carrying several expensive bags and immediately spotted Anna. "What is this child doing here again? Didn't I tell you, Richard, she has no place in this house?" Her words cut through the air like knives. Anna froze, lowering her head, her small hands trembling. But this time, something was different. Richard didn't simply ignore it. He looked from Vivian to Anna, and for the first time his voice carried a tone his wife hadn't heard in years. "Leave her be, Vivian." Vivian blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me?" Richard's gaze shifted back to Anna. His heart, though reluctant, had been touched. He couldn't admit it yet, not even to himself, but he knew something had changed. Vivian, however, wasn't a woman to be silenced easily. And soon, her arrogance would turn into the cruelest of humiliations for both Marina and her daughter. The masks were beginning to fall. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with its usual rhythm of footsteps, distant conversations, and the faint hum of vacuum cleaners gliding across marble floors. Marina worked tirelessly, dusting the shelves and polishing the silver. Her hands were rough from years of labor, yet she carried herself with quiet dignity. But that dignity was constantly trampled by Vivian Turner, who seemed to take pleasure in reminding her of her place. "Marina, this glass isn't polished enough. Do it again," Vivian barked, dropping a crystal goblet onto the counter. Marina nodded silently, taking the glass back with bowed head. Anna watched from the corner, her small fists clenched. Every word against her mother felt like a dagger in her own chest. Richard sat nearby in his study, the door slightly ajar. He could hear Vivian's sharp tone, see the weariness in Marina's movements, and though he said nothing, his jaw tightened. The memory of Anna's prayer from the day before lingered in his mind like a haunting melody he couldn't silence. But Vivian wasn't done. Later that day, with several guests expected for an evening gathering, she cornered Marina in the kitchen. "Listen carefully," Vivian said, her voice cold, her eyes like ice. "When our guests arrive tonight, you and your daughter are to stay out of sight. I don't want anyone asking who that child is. Understood?" Marina's heart sank. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. Anna overheard every word. Her little chest rose and fell quickly, a storm building inside her. She tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, why does she always treat us like we're nothing?" Marina crouched to meet her daughter's eyes, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Because some people forget that money doesn't make them better, my love. But we must endure. God sees everything." Vivian's voice cut in like a whip. "Hurry up, Marina. Don't waste time whispering to your little stray." Anna's face burned with humiliation. She wasn't a stray. She wasn't invisible. But in this house, under Vivian's rule, that's exactly how she was made to feel. That evening, as the guests arrived, politicians, businessmen, and their elegantly dressed wives, the mansion gleamed with laughter and music. Vivian played the perfect hostess, smiling sweetly, hiding her venom behind pearls and diamonds. But in the shadows of the hallway, Anna and Marina sat quietly, forbidden to be seen. Anna's eyes glistened with unshed tears. What no one realized, however, was that Richard had noticed everything. He had watched his wife humiliate Marina. He had seen the fire of injustice burn in Anna's young eyes. And for the first time, the mighty billionaire began questioning which masks were real: the polished smile of his wife, or the quiet, unshakable dignity of the maid and her daughter. The night wasn't over, and the cruelty that awaited Anna would push her to the edge of despair before courage would rise. The mansion glittered that night. Chandeliers bathed the grand hall in golden light, violins played softly in the background, and laughter echoed as crystal glasses clinked. Guests praised the art on the walls, the wine in their cups, and the luxury that surrounded them. To everyone present, the Turner estate looked like a palace of perfection. But behind the curtains of that splendor, cruelty simmered. Anna and Marina were ordered to stay hidden in the back hallway, far from the guests' eyes. They sat on a wooden bench, the sound of the celebration reaching them like an unreachable world. Anna fidgeted nervously, her little stomach empty, her heart heavy. She whispered, "Mama, why do we have to hide? We didn't do anything wrong." Marina stroked her daughter's hair, forcing a smile through her sadness. "Because some people are blind, my love. They only see money, not hearts." Just then, Vivian's sharp heels clicked against the floor. She appeared, her face painted with a false smile for her guests, but her eyes cold as steel. "Marina, bring the dessert tray. And you," she glared at Anna, "don't move from this spot. Do you hear me?" Anna nodded quickly, shrinking under her stare. Moments later, Marina returned with the tray, balancing fine china filled with cakes and pastries. But as she passed through the crowded hall, Vivian suddenly stumbled into her. The tray wobbled and the fine china crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. Gasps filled the room. Vivian's voice rang out, dripping with venom. "Marina, how clumsy can you be? In front of all my guests." Marina bent down instantly, trembling, picking up shards of porcelain with bare hands. A thin cut opened on her palm, a drop of blood staining the marble floor. Richard, watching from across the room, clenched his fist. He knew Vivian had done it on purpose. He saw the cruel smirk flicker on her lips before she quickly masked it with fake distress. But Vivian wasn't finished. Her eyes shifted to the corner where Anna stood, trembling, tears pooling in her eyes. And look at her daughter, standing there like a stray mutt. "Is this what you bring into my house, Marina?" The guests fell silent. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered behind their hands. Anna couldn't hold it in anymore. Her tears spilled over, her small voice cracking as she said, "We're not dogs. Mama works so hard. Please, stop." Vivian's laughter cut her off, sharp and cruel. "Oh, listen to her. Such boldness for a maid's child." Anna's chest heaved with sobs. She wanted to disappear, to run far from the mocking eyes and cruel laughter. But Richard saw it all. He saw the humiliation, the injustice, the quiet strength of Marina, who bit her tongue to protect her daughter. And he felt something shift inside him once again. Anger. Not at them, but at his own wife, whose cruelty knew no limits. For Anna, it was a night of tears. But those tears would soon become sparks of courage that even Vivian couldn't extinguish. The hall was still buzzing from the cruel scene. Shattered porcelain remained scattered across the marble floor, a stain of Marina's blood hidden under the polished shoes of the wealthy guests. Vivian laughed it off, turning her humiliation of the maid into a spectacle, as if it were nothing more than entertainment. But in the shadows, Anna's tears burned hotter than ever, her small fists clenched, her chest rising and falling quickly. For 9 years she had learned to stay quiet, to stay invisible. But something inside her cracked that night. She could not stay silent anymore. When Vivian turned to boast to her guests again, Anna suddenly stepped forward. Her voice trembled at first, but it carried through the room like a spark in dry wood. "Stop hurting my mama." The room fell silent. Forks paused mid-air, glasses hovered above lips. All eyes turned to the small figure standing near the corner, her face streaked with tears, her little hands shaking with rage. Vivian froze, her smile dropping. "What did you just say?" she hissed, narrowing her eyes. Anna's legs trembled, but she stood her ground. She took another step closer, her voice louder now. "You laugh at her? You treat her like she's nothing. But she's not nothing. My mama works harder than anyone in this house, and she's kinder than all of you." A murmur rippled among the guests. Some exchanged glances, uneasy. A few even nodded subtly, uncomfortable with Vivian's cruelty being called out by a child. Vivian's face turned crimson, a mixture of fury and humiliation. "How dare you! You ungrateful brat!" But before she could finish, Anna's little voice cut her off once more, firm and clear. "God sees everything you do. One day you'll have to answer to Him for how you treat people." The weight of her words hung heavy in the hall. Vivian staggered for a reply, but her guests were watching her closely now, no longer amused but judgmental. The polished mask of the perfect hostess was cracking before their eyes. Marina rushed to her daughter, kneeling and pulling her into her arms. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Anna, hush, my love. Please." But Richard wasn't looking at Marina anymore. His eyes were fixed on Anna, this small, trembling girl who had just spoken with more courage than most adults dared to. He saw fire in her words, honesty in her tears, and it pierced him deeper than any business betrayal ever had. Vivian, humiliated, tried to laugh it off, pretending the child's outburst was nonsense. But the room wasn't fooled. Whispers filled the air, not about Marina anymore, but about Vivian herself. And for the first time, the balance of power in the Turner mansion began to shift. The guests had left, one by one, their polite smiles masking whispers that Vivian could not control. The grand hall, once filled with music and laughter, now echoed with silence. Shattered porcelain had been cleaned away, but the sting of what happened lingered in every corner of the mansion. Vivian stormed up the staircase, her heels striking the marble like a judge's gavel. Her fury was undeniable, but Richard remained downstairs, still seated in his armchair, staring into the dying embers of the fireplace. Anna's words replayed in his mind. "God sees everything you do. One day you'll have to answer to Him." They echoed louder than any deal he had ever struck, louder than the applause he received in boardrooms. For the first time in decades, Richard Turner felt truly exposed, not by rivals, not by competitors, but by the innocent voice of a 9-year-old girl. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but the drink tasted bitter. He set it down untouched. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. His breathing grew heavy. Memories came flooding back, memories he had buried long ago. He remembered the one-room shack he grew up in, the nights when his mother went without food so he could eat. He remembered her calloused hands, her tired smile, and the prayers she whispered over him before bed. And he remembered the promise he had made as a boy. "When I grow up, Mama, you'll never suffer again." Yet here he was, decades later, living in unimaginable wealth, but treating others with the same disdain he once despised. His chest tightened. For the first time, guilt didn't just touch him, it crushed him. Meanwhile, in the servants' quarters, Marina gently rocked Anna in her arms. The girl had cried herself to sleep, her small body exhausted from the confrontation. Marina kissed her forehead, whispering softly, "You were so brave, my little one. But Mama is afraid your courage will cost us dearly." Tears slipped down Marina's cheeks. She had endured humiliation for years, swallowing her pride to keep her job. But tonight had been different. Tonight her daughter had spoken what Marina had always kept inside. Back in his study, Richard stood and walked to the window. He looked out over his sprawling estate, the gardens, the fountains, the endless rows of lights. It all looked hollow now, meaningless. For the first time in his life, he questioned whether his fortune was truly success, or if it had only turned him into the very kind of man he once swore he'd never become. The weight of conscience pressed harder. He knew something had to change, but he also knew the truth was about to surface, and when it did, the world of the Turners would never be the same again. The mansion had grown eerily quiet. Vivian had locked herself in her room, furious at the whispers that had followed her throughout the night. Marina and Anna stayed hidden in the servants' quarters, afraid that the outburst would cost them not just their dignity, but their livelihood. But Richard could not rest. The weight on his chest was unbearable. The girl's words, her prayer, her tears, each one pierced deeper than the last. He paced his study, pulling open drawers, scattering old files, searching for something he hadn't dared to look at in years. Finally, he found it, a faded envelope tucked away at the bottom of a locked cabinet. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were old letters, written in a delicate hand, letters from a woman he had once loved. Long before Vivian, long before the empire he had built consumed him. One letter in particular caught his eye. His vision blurred as he read the words, "Richard, if you ever wonder what became of me, know this. I gave birth to a daughter. She is your daughter too. I named her Marina." Richard's heart stopped. The paper slipped from his hands. Marina, the faithful maid who had served quietly in his house. The woman he had humiliated by ignoring her worth. The one who endured Vivian's cruelty for years in silence. And Anna, his granddaughter. He staggered back, gripping the edge of his desk. Memories flooded in. He had known Marina's mother, a kind woman from his youth, a woman he abandoned in his hunger for wealth and power. He had buried that past, convincing himself it was over. But here it was, living under his very roof. Anna's prayer echoed in his ears again. "Please don't be so harsh with Mama. She works so hard." Tears welled in his eyes for the first time in decades. He left his study, walking with unsteady steps down the narrow hallway toward the servants' quarters. He paused at the door, hearing Marina's soft voice inside, humming a lullaby as Anna slept. He knocked gently. Marina looked up, startled. She stood quickly, wiping her eyes. "Mr. Turner, I'm sorry about tonight. I'll take Anna and leave tomorrow if you want." Richard's voice cracked as he spoke. "Marina, you're not going anywhere." She froze. His eyes, usually so cold, were filled with something she had never seen before. Pain, regret, recognition. "I should have told you years ago," he continued, his voice trembling. "But I was a coward. Marina, you are my daughter." The words hung in the air like thunder. Marina staggered back, her hand covering her mouth, tears welling instantly. What? That can't be—" But Richard pulled out the faded letter and placed it in her hands. Marina read it, her knees weakening with each line. Anna stirred in her sleep, unaware that her life had just changed forever. Richard's voice broke into a whisper, "Which means, Anna is my granddaughter, my blood." For the first time in years, the walls of the Turner mansion didn't feel like marble and gold. They felt like stone crumbling into dust. The truth had finally come to light. And now, justice was inevitable. Mourning broke over the Turner estate, but the mansion no longer felt the same. For decades, it had been a fortress of pride and arrogance. Now, the truth had cracked its walls. Richard Turner barely slept that night. He sat in silence, staring at the old letters, at the fragile bond he had ignored for so long. Every heartbeat carried the weight of regret. At dawn, he walked with heavy steps toward the servants' quarters. Marina was awake, her eyes swollen from tears. Anna still slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that had changed her life. Richard stood in the doorway, his voice low, almost trembling. "Marina, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can't waste another day living a lie." Marina's eyes narrowed, suspicion and pain colliding. Why now? After all these years of silence, why now? He swallowed hard. Because last night your daughter reminded me of the man I used to be, the man I promised my own mother I'd never forget. And I did forget, until Anna's prayer brought me back. Tears brimmed in Marina's eyes. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to scream. But when she looked at him, she saw not the powerful billionaire, but an old man, broken by his own conscience. At that moment, Anna stirred awake. She rubbed her eyes, then looked at her grandfather without knowing the truth that bound them. "Mama, why is he here?" Richard knelt before the little girl. His voice cracked as he said, "Anna, you're not just the maid's daughter, you are my granddaughter." Anna blinked, confused. "Daughter?" Marina knelt beside her, tears streaming. "It's true, my love. He is your family too." Anna's eyes widened. She looked from her mother to Richard, then back again. Slowly, she whispered, "Does that mean we don't have to be invisible anymore?" Richard's heart shattered. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "No, my little one, never again. You will be seen. You will be loved. You will have everything I denied you." At that very moment, Vivian entered, her face twisted with anger. "What nonsense is this, Richard? Don't you dare." Richard stood tall, his voice thundering like she had never heard before. "Enough, Vivian. For years I turned a blind eye to your cruelty. No more. This house will no longer be a place of humiliation. If you cannot live with kindness, then you cannot live here at all." Vivian gasped, her face pale with fury. "You would choose them over me?" Richard's eyes blazed. "I would choose truth. I would choose justice. And yes, I would choose them. Every time." Vivian stormed out. Her reign over the mansion shattered. Richard turned back to Marina and Anna, his voice soft once more. "I cannot erase the past, but I can give you a future. This house is as much yours as it is mine now." Marina broke down in tears, holding Anna close. The little girl smiled through her own tears, whispering softly, "God didn't forget us, Mama. He heard my prayer." And in that moment, Richard knew it was true. Divine justice had arrived, not through wealth, not through power, but through the pure heart of a child. The mansion, once filled with coldness, now echoed with something it had long forgotten. Hope. The end.